Ladies and gentlemen, before we get started on this episode, it's important to remember that we need to be empathetic and understanding of every single guest that I have on this show, so that way they understand that they can share this stuff without having any backlash coming from the community. I think it takes a lot of bravery for someone to come on this show and be able to tell about heart-wrenching things that occur. So please be understanding, empathetic, and supportive to my guests. If you enjoyed this content, it would really help me out if you did three things. You followed me on Twitter, you subscribed to me on YouTube, and you share out this video to any of your friends who might also enjoy this content. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Dives into the Minds of Esports. My name is Blake Panashevitz, and today with me, I have an amazing guest who's actually been called out by a previous guest. I'm very excited to have him. He was previously with last night's Leftovers. Now he is with the, I would say, famous Atlanta Reign. Please let me welcome Dusttin Bowerman, maybe better known as the one and the only Dogman. Welcome.
That's an intro I've ever heard one. Thanks, Blake. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me here.
Trying to get my intros better as we go through this. Did I pronounce
That's a lot better than my intros. Yeah, Bowerman. Yeah, that's pretty good.
I didn't even ask this time. Normally I try to ask, but I was like, screw it, I can do this. He's got a simple name.
Yeah, some people would try to even pronounce my first name as like Dusttin or something like that.
Dusttin? I did notice the double T's. That's a little bit of an odd thing. Is there a story behind that? Because who puts double T's in like Dusttin?
I'll try not to go too quick, but basically my great grandma Tilly, when she passed away, my mom just added a T to name it after her. But like, then if that's the case, then what's the point of the other T? It's like the other T just is normal, I guess. I don't know.
So it was because of your great grandmother?
Yeah, it's because of my great grandmother. I don't really know too much about her, but I mean, that's why it's my name.
You know, you think you might want to look into that if you're named after somebody like, I kind of want to know who this person was because I have a T in my name and everyone else probably thinks that this double T shit is kind of weird.
No, I don't really care that much.
No,
I don't care what people think. I like it. It's original, all about originality. I probably should have changed my name from Dogman to Dusttin, but it's too late for that now.
It's not too late. There's people who name change.
No, I don't want it. Dogman's still a better name than Dusttin.
Dogman. So I have heard. Do you ever? Because obviously, like, you look at someone like, is it Sonic Fox, who's obviously a representative, like the furry community.
Oh, I'm not a furry.
No, I know,
I'm not a furry.
I know. I'm leading into my easy question. Do people ever ask, like, say, hey, are you like a furry? Like with this?
There's a meme in my chat that people when there's like a couple people that just come into my stream and they say. They're like, hey, what's going on, furry? Or something like that. And then I even have a command that's like !furry, and it says, I am not a furry. So I just got to get it out there so people know that I'm not a furry. Yeah. It's kind of the opposite branding. It's like, it's not, branding to be representative of the community. It's the branding to be a representative of what people that can like animals, but also not be furries.
Yes.
So it's like, I think it's.
Do you have a dog?
Furry. I don't know. I did at one point. Passed away though.
Oh, I'm sorry for your loss.
Like 4 years ago or so, I think.
Oh, okay. So obviously, the crux of the show is kind of digging into you as a person. I'm really excited. The person who actually called you out was Jamerson. Jamerson was like, "I want to see Dogman."
Jamerson did it?
Yeah, because his videos, because obviously I pre-record these. His is going to be dropping here soon. He was like, "I want to see Dogman." I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so excited! This is the first person actually coming on who has been called out, so it's going to be like a cool net." So he said that I'm gonna enjoy like talking to you and delving into like your history and the person that is you. And I've already I obviously researched all my guests, and I will say I think I'm gonna be very fascinated by this one compared to maybe some of my other ones. I think you have a very interesting history that a lot of people might be able to relate to. So obviously you were on last night's Leftovers. So we're gonna go before that. We're gonna jump way before being a pro was even maybe a thought in your mind. Okay, so
all right.
Growing up, you grew up in Arizona. Where'd you grow up in Arizona?
In Chandler, so southern, or it's like I guess it's like southeast of Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I guess if you see like an L shape, but you put the L upside down, like Phoenix is in the where the bottom of the L would be. I mean, I don't know how easy that is to explain, but like there's like couple highways that leads up to Phoenix, and Chandler's pretty close. It's pretty populated. It's a decent side of town.
Did you live there almost your entire life?
Yeah. Right now I live in Gilbert, but I lived there for pretty much the better part of my like most of my life. I don't even know, like 13 probably or 14. No, maybe even later. Maybe till like I was 16 even.
Okay.
And then we moved just to get like just to get out of because the area, the price of the area was just going up. So like we just sold and then moved somewhere else in the meantime.
So you moved when
But
you were like 16, you said?
yeah, I moved when I was around 16. Yeah.
Okay. So what was growing up in Chandler like for you? Was it you said it's fairly populated. So when you talk about fairly, you have to describe what fairly populated, because to me that sounds like 100 kids in my grade. Like that's I'm like, "Oh god, there's a ton
Uh,
of people."
no, I don't even remember. We had a pretty big school. I'd say did our class had a lot of kids in it. Like our school had like nearly, I don't know, maybe 2,000 kids at school.
Oh Jesus.
There's out of 4 grades, so I don't know. I had a pretty decent sized class, maybe upwards of 200
Mhm.
or more. No, not 200, maybe even higher than that. I don't know. I safe to say I didn't know everybody in my grade, so
Yeah.
I knew a lot of people, but not everybody.
Okay. So what type of student were you growing up? Were you the class clown? Because I've seen some of your streams, and you definitely seem like you could have been the class clown. Maybe were
Uh,
you the smart kid? Were you the
uh
what crowds were you
I
running?
I was kind of like the mixed crowd, I guess, because mainly I hung out with the nerds and my
Hmm.
friends, and I not it's not trying to like I guess I shouldn't say it, but I guess it's sort of like a slang name. But the group that I hung out with was like we called it the Asian group because the majority of our friend group is of Asian descent. It's just me and my friend Cole are the only white kids in the group.
Hmm.
So I mean, the general group I hung out with was smart, but I was more of a generalist, I guess. I hung out with like everybody.
Okay.
Because coming into high school, I just hung out with I was friends with most people, just generally, but I
Hmm.
wasn't much of a party or anything. Just stayed, and I mean, to be honest, I guess a pretty big aspect of my life that I think is pretty important to tell is that when I was in school, at least, like there was like only probably 1 year that I like really tried at my grades,
Hmm.
and then besides that, I just did not really care too much. So I guess I guess it's like everything. It's really true when they say that you're only as good as you like try to be. I guess so.
Hmm.
Which I guess it even translates into Overwatch because like
Yeah.
if I'm trying my hardest, that you can be one of the best, right? But if you obviously not trying that hard, then no matter how smart you are, you won't succeed, right?
So do you think that you didn't try your hardest in Overwatch? Like,
Oh,
was
I
there
know in
moments
Overwatch.
where?
I mean, it depended on the team. I mean, like by trying my hardest, I think I always try my hardest, but like specifically on certain teams, I guess that weren't as good. I did more crazy shit. Like I'd like at that point, like when you're on a team that gets like destroyed so bad,
Yeah.
which I wasn't really on many teams that were like that. I was only really on one. But when you're at like a point like that, then you just kind of toss it to the back of your mind, and then you just kind of try to do as much crazy shit as possible to try to turn the fight because you're not gonna win, not gonna win the fight. But obviously, I wouldn't recommend that to everybody. It's good to be a team player, but in that team, I kind of just gave up hope. But I only was with that team for like a couple weeks, so
Hmm.
wasn't that big of a deal.
Okay. So growing up, you said that you didn't try very hard in school. Why was that? Why is it like you said you tried 1 year, but what was it that you were like, I don't really want to try doing this? And was it like all the way through school, or was it only high school mostly?
Uh, I'd say it's probably a mix between the two. I guess I've always been a person that just kind of that takes like shortcuts or like does what's needed to get a higher grade but not excel, I guess.
Okay.
Like all my friends were AP kids, so like all the extent of my success would at max reach reach like the advanced classes, which is one below AP. So like that was the extent of me like trying my hardest, but like I felt like they already had such an advantage in like that regard. Like I was perfectly fine just like making my way through it and just kind of doing my own thing.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I guess it's just generally like that ideology that like my friends are really smart and I'm realistically not as smart as them. But I mean, they never believed that. It's just kind of a mentality I put myself. I guess like I guess it was like a paranoid mentality, where it was like I'm not gonna be as smart as them, and I'm perfectly fine with that. So
Hmm. So it almost seems that you were kind of down on yourself, that you were lowering your standards for yourself, at least through school. Do you ever think, like, is that something that you constantly do? Is that something where you're like, I'm not good enough to be doing this, I shouldn't be here? Um,
like nowadays.
is it something you've grown out of, or is it something you still do?
Yeah. No, I think the reason that I grew out of it was because Overwatch was a new game. I
Hmm.
think that the thing that was important to me is like the reason that I think I had that mentality. Now thinking about it, is like when they were young, when they were in elementary school, they were already moved up into the advanced
Hmm.
classes. I was in the regular classes the entire time and doing well in the regular classes. But by the time I got to like middle school, in my mind it was too late for me to reach their level. At that point, it was like they were so much higher than me. They were so much smarter than me. I'm only a year behind in terms of like what they're doing, but realistically, in terms of catching up to do, it's more work than's necessary for me. And when I was a senior in high school, I did the DECA work program, which is the marketing kids program, and I was a state officer. But that gave me time to do my own thing. Like I had like 3 classes, I think, by my senior year. So I went home and I played Counter Strike. But as you know, Counter Strike's like esports group was already around for years and years
Yeah.
before that, right? The amount of catching up I would have to do to be a professional in Counter Strike is ridiculous. I would have to like probably even I don't even know if I'd say more effort than Overwatch. It's just like RNG at that point. Like there's probably a 10 or like less than 5% chance or lower. If even if you full timed it and you were good, there's still like such a small chance to go pro in Counter Strike. So when Overwatch came out, that was a brand new game, right? That was the start's new. I'm against everybody on the same level. Now that we're all on the same level, I can try my hardest and know that I at least have a chance to compete, right?
Hmm.
And that was why I liked Overwatch so much. It's not necessarily the game itself, but I mean I like the game, but it's more about the fact that it was fairgrounds, it was even, and I had a chance to go pro in it, right?
Hmm. So you were kind of looking at it like, I'm gonna make sure that there's no advantages that other people have. Where if we're gonna do this, then I'm gonna prove that I'm like one of the best by being on equal terms and like showing that you don't have an advantage that makes you better at this. So
Yeah, exactly.
hmm. That must have felt really good then when you started to excel then, compared to everyone else there, considering that you were able to not factor in any of these other advantages that they might or might not have.
Yeah, no, it felt pretty good. That's why I like playing Overwatch so much. Is just because like I just play day in and day out, and I knew at the time I knew Grego, which was one of the original players for Cloud9. Now I don't think he plays Overwatch anymore, but I dual queue with him a lot, and people started to recognize me, and then I just kind of went from there, I guess. But
Hmm.
yeah, it felt pretty good.
So, one of the things like growing up, it doesn't sound like you might not have had issues with. I know that I was bullied a lot, and I know that a lot of the other guests that I've had on here, school is kind of like a very contentious thing where people either are like, yeah, it was whatever, or it was like, yeah, this actually really sucked, and it was something that caused I didn't want to do it anymore. And I know that you started college, but looking at like high school, what was school like for you, or elementary school
Um,
too, because you moved.
for me, I don't know. I think specifically with school, it wasn't necessarily me getting bullied. It was more my friends,
Hmm.
which it like, and even then, it wasn't really that often. So realistically, if anything, during school, I was like kind of that person that would stand up for the kids getting bullied or something like that. I wouldn't be the one being bullied necessarily, just because at least in school, I was more of a talkative person. I was more sociable. And it wasn't necessarily easy to pick on me besides my height, and people are not going to do that in like middle and high
Yeah.
school because everybody's still growing, so
No.
it's not like that's something they could bully me on. So I
Hmm.
don't know, I feel like personally I didn't have to deal with that issue, but I mean, no, I didn't really have to deal with this shit. I hung out with my friends, I did my own thing.
I actually like that you mentioned that you would stick up for other people because I noticed something specifically related to Overwatch. You're very verbal about a lot of your opinions on the way things are being run or issues, and it's almost like you're still doing the same thing. Where a lot of times you'll speak up for people who maybe don't want to or can't. That's something that I've kind of noticed.
Yeah, I always like to have like I don't know. At least something that I've stuck with. I don't know necessarily recently. Like I've been keeping more of a lower profile in terms of talking about things too much, but I always like to have like I don't know, a kid under my wing. Like in the tier two scene, I always like to support some of the like players that are even then with the Dogman team. But besides
Yeah.
that, there's always like a player or two that I like to have like to keep my eye on and to always support. And like that transition was like originally it was like Dalton, which had his chances and has gone to had to gladiators and stuff. Then
Mhm.
after that, who did I like a lot after Dalton? I'm not exactly sure. Maybe there's like a couple people. I supported Dalton for a long time, but now there's a new kid on my Dogman team that's a flex support, named Bird, Berd, and and he's a really good player, and I hope he makes contenders next season. So like those players, those types of players that maybe are coming in late, like not having the advantage that I did at starting at the beginning because of
Mhm.
their age. Um, I'm trying to support a lot. So
Yeah, I think it's really good to see people actually supporting like T2 and Tier 3. And Jane, obviously, right now just released his news that he's going to be throwing tournaments, like cash tournaments, which I think is freaking amazing. That dude
yeah, Jane's
needs
a great
like
dude.
a ton of credit for what he does for Overwatch and like the Tier 2, Tier 3 scene. It's phenomenal. Like throwing his own money in, being like, hey, I'm going to help fund this for you guys so you guys have a chance for this. Um, which we're going to talk about some stuff with T2, T3 later on. Um,
All right.
uh, looking at growing up, what was your family life like? Do you have any brothers or sisters?
No, I'm only child. I did have dogs for the majority of my life, but besides that, yeah, only child. In like a upper middle class family.
Mhm.
I mean, pretty relatively easy. I mean, not relatively easy. I mean, I guess it was pretty easy. I didn't. I have really good parents, so didn't really have any issues growing up with them. Not no abuse or anything like that.
No.
So, um, but
But
yeah, I
games
mean,
were
what
definitely a contentious issue with your parents.
yeah, at least for a little bit. It's just kind of like the main thing that they were concerned about is more or less is more or less money, I guess. So,
Hmm.
because I live in a well, I guess that wouldn't be. We don't really follow like that. Like my mom's Jewish and my dad's not. But realistically, either way, they both grew up poor. So they're
Hmm.
both now they work to get to where they are, right? So they see money as a way to just do better in life and to generally like when you have money, your life is going to be good, right? So
Yeah.
that's the way they see it. And like when I first started playing Overwatch um and then also not making money at it but doing that more than I was focusing on school, then that started to be an issue because I wasn't making money at it, or the money I was making when I started streaming was only like maybe like a couple $100 or something like that a month or something like that. So um at that point it was like it took a long time before it started to like actually um like now they're pretty nice about it. They see that I'm making money at it now. Now that I'm sponsored, it's a lot easier to explain, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to show that, hey, let's just how much money I'm bringing in, and even if they don't understand it, they can at least fall back on, well, he's got a job and he's doing something that is generating income. Maybe we don't fully understand it, but we know it's some new age job at the very least. Um,
Yeah.
so they were. It sounds like school was something that they kind of found very important growing up, but considering that generally if you come from a poor background, school is like one of the major ways to actually like pull yourself out or to keep
Yeah.
at least what we're taught majority of the time. So were they? How did they feel about you not always trying in school growing up?
Well, I mean, it wasn't really noticeable, I guess, because like I said, like
It was
me
an
not
acceptable
trying.
standard.
Yeah, it was like me not really trying too hard was more or less getting me good grades still.
Hmm.
Like that. Like my point was that like rather like when I tried was like my sophomore year, like I said in
Yeah,
high school, and that was like when I like aced every class.
yeah,
But like besides that year, I was getting maybe like B's and maybe a couple C's. So
yeah.
like realistically to them, like that was still good enough. But obviously it wasn't great, but it was still good enough, right?
Okay,
I mean, getting above like a 3 point, I think I ended with maybe 3.4 GPA in high school, which wasn't
yeah.
that great, but it's not like
Better than
it's not
mine.
something terrible. Yeah,
Better
good
than
enough,
mine.
I guess.
Way better than mine. So my
Gosh,
GPA
at
high
least
school.
was it 2.9
No, it was a 3-1.
or no?
I think.
Oh,
I
okay.
think I had a
I think
3-1.
Calvin had a 0.9 GPA, so I mean,
Ooh. Okay, that's pretty
I had to bring it
bad.
up. Had to bring it
Oh,
up.
that's okay. You know what's funny is actually I didn't do very well in like high school or middle school, but when I went to college, the people who did do very well in high school ended up failing out of college. Like some of them did really really bad in college, whereas
Wow.
I did very well because when I was going to high school, I was playing catch up a lot of times because I swapped schools, and the school I
Oh,
swapped
okay.
to was way more advanced, and so I was like, wow, I'm like 3 years behind. And so I was just like grinding all the time on like studying and it did not go very well.
Oh,
But college, it was a lot better. So looking at like you went to college briefly.
mhm.
Uh, Before that, when did you start to get into games? Because games were obviously a reason why college didn't go, or at least one of the factors why college wasn't going so hot. When did you start to get into games? And I don't mean like 5-year-old. I was playing like Mario Kart,
Oh, you mean
like
like competitively, right?
yeah, like when did competitive games really start to kick in?
It was probably, let's see, what year would it have been? It was probably even my sophomore year, the year I was doing really well. That was when I started to play Counter Strike, like I said, and
Mhm.
Counter Strike, at least the global offensive one, after that came out, um, I started to play it a lot, and I like because all my friends were good at MOBAs and stuff. Like I played League and stuff before that, but like I wasn't really interested in it, and
Yeah.
it was something that like I didn't like too much, like having to read all about the items and
Yeah.
study all that stuff. Like I wanted to play a game that I could just grind it out mechanics and just find it out on my own, right?
Mhm.
And that was Counter Strike for me. And none of my friends were good at FPSs, so like by the time I started playing Counter Strike a lot, I got to like MG1 or whatever, Master Guardian 1, which is decent rank in Counter Strike. It's not great. But all my friends were still like silvers and stuff, so everybody was pretty impressed. And like after that, I was like, okay, I could be the best even in my school at this game. So like I might as well keep playing it, I guess.
Mhm.
So like in the work program and that I was telling you about when I was a deck estate officer, I had all this time to myself after school. So when I was a senior, I would just like I'd do my classes, then about like noon or like 1 p.m. when it was lunchtime, I'd head home and I'd just play games for the rest of the day pretty much. Because all the schoolwork was pretty easy for me to do besides that.
Yeah.
Um so I mean I just gamed all day in my senior year, and then it kind of led into college, and then kind of snowballed from there.
Mhm. So when you're looking at graduating high school and you're looking at colleges, um, what were you thinking? Were you someone who was like, "Oh my god, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to get into. I need to do this because it's an expectation of like my parents." What was going on in your head when you graduate high school and you're looking at going into college?
Well, my mom's a like a which for her job she works for a chicken company now, but she worked as a marketing, like not marketing director. I guess it would be like marketing director, but in the marketing department pretty much. So I just figured I'd do that. I'd do either that or finance or something like that because it generally makes money, and I didn't mind. Like I didn't have that much fun doing college and stuff. Like I didn't have any real passion about finance or marketing or any of that, but I didn't hate it. So like I mean I wasn't too picky about it, to be
Hmm.
honest. Um but for college at least I already knew that all my friends were going to ASU, to Arizona State University, and so I just figured I'd apply to there. But they always wanted me to go to like community college anyways because it's cheaper.
Hmm.
Um so that's what I eventually started doing, like recently and stuff. Like I'm taking a class every now and again. But obviously, my major, what I've wanted to do is in terms of college, it has changed. But um, that's like it's not even that big of a of a change to me because it seems at this point with my esports career and playing games, it seems kind of far away, I guess, right now.
Hmm.
But
Yeah. So when you think about like, let's say that esports ends tomorrow for you, what is it that you feel passionate about that you would like to do? Like you, let's say you
I
break your hands, can't be a player anymore. What do you do?
I feel pretty passionate about broadcast and casting and
Mhm.
that sort of stuff. I've been watching a lot more sports nowadays because I want to see like I want to see how they do their broadcasting and like their social media and that kind of stuff. So to me, like broadcast journalism is something that I'm pretty passionate about outside of it. Like with my own podcast and that kind of stuff, I always I know the importance of that kind of stuff, and I like commentating games. And obviously, if Overwatch ended or if esports ended, like I probably wouldn't be as good as a commentator in like basketball or like football or something like that. But I could probably learn it, and that's something that I'd like to transition to if I needed to.
Mhm. So you start to go to college, and you said you went to Arizona State University, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
what what happened? Like I know that I've heard this like story like games started to play in, but you get to school, this new place, never been like what was first of all, what was school like for you when you first got there? Was it something that was kind of scary? Was it something that was uh you liked, you didn't like? I mean, classes are boring, but
I mean, to me, when I was what is it? When I was playing games and stuff during that, because I was pretty into Overwatch at that time. I wasn't
Mhm.
there wasn't a clear like I really want when I joined college anyways. It was the main purpose of school in my mind was to do it to make my parents happy
Okay.
because they really wanted me to go to school. And they said because they basically gave me the set. It's either you do school or you're out of the house. So I
So
didn't
it
want
was
to
an
get kicked out.
ultimatum.
It was an ultimatum, yeah. So I
Okay.
needed to do school pretty much, otherwise I get kicked out. So I don't know. At the time, I don't know, because like it wasn't really something that uh, like I could see the financial like there was some good like decent money for my college fund to go to get into school. So it kind of to me it kind of I was looking at it as like a time like buying time before I could like to get as much time at home to play Overwatch as much as
Yeah.
I can before they kick me out. So I was like, that was the way I looked at it. Like I needed to keep doing school and seem like I was doing well in school. Um, Otherwise, I was out of the house. So I
Mhm.
just kept doing school, playing Overwatch, and then I got to the point where I did get kicked out. But at that point, I was relatively established, and I had some friends that helped me.
Yeah.
Um, and I got to stay with them. But with school, it was just kind of like a time waster for me because like I had to drive all the way across town like nearly at like I don't know 9 a.m. during
Mhm.
rush hour traffic like for an hour every morning, and then I got to a point where I just stopped driving and I was like, oh, all my stuff's online, so I don't know.
So that must have strained, at least during that time, must have been a real strain on your relationship with your parents. Um,
Uh,
or
yeah,
did you
for
hide
sure.
it? Did you like even if you were hiding it? I would have felt guilty. Was it something that you went through? Because I imagine you were hiding it. Did you feel guilty about like hiding it from your parents? And what was that like?
Yeah, for sure. No, I felt pretty guilty about it for my entire time in college every day. Um, but we got to a point where we've like melded it at this point,
Yeah.
so it's not like that anymore. But it was pretty stressful. I mean, it's not like it does sound a little what is it? What's like if a rich person is complaining about something, third world problems and that kind of stuff.
Okay, so okay, I need to. We're gonna
It's not
side.
necessarily
We're
like that,
no,
but
no. We're gonna sidebar for a minute. People
all
have,
right.
in my opinion, when someone has problems, you can't really rate those problems versus other people, right? Because it's all individual. So very much like pain, stress, all these things. As soon as you start comparing it to other people, then you're in a losing battle forevermore. I think someone's what happened to someone, like what they felt. You really need to understand that that's their issue and that's what they felt, and I think that's fine. So I think that like what you go through, I don't think we need to compare it, or I don't. If people are saying like, "Wow, that's not that bad. That's a rich person," fuck you. Like whoever says that, fuck you. Okay. First of all, you should just
That's
be
kind of
empathetic and understanding of other people and meet them where they are and work with them. Like,
yeah. I mean, I agree with you, but at like I can't necessarily fully agree just because it's simply like society, and that's
yeah,
like that's what people have kind of have brought it to. So if they want me to feel bad about like there's a lot of people on Reddit that like at least at the beginning like oh this idiot fucking threw away
yeah,
school and for Overwatch, and I was like yeah I can see your point. You're probably upset that you have issues in your life that you were not as fortunate to be able to go to school. But obviously my ideal life is different than that person, so I don't know. I mean, I can be empathetic towards them too, and
yeah.
like understand that.
100%.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, it did upset me still, like when people were saying that stuff. But I got to a point like because I was so paranoid and like looking at people what people said about me and stuff back however long like a couple of years ago. That I would like always control F my name in like multiple Discord servers and like look for everything on the Reddit about me. Um, but then after a certain point, I was like, that's not really worth it. Just let people do their own thing, feel how they want.
Was that happening before you were like making it into like some of the pre-Overwatch teams, or like was that when you were building up and getting known with?
It was probably for the first let's see, how long has my career been? I'm 20 now. I started when I was 17 and a half or so. So probably up until I was like maybe 18. So maybe like up and coming and into playing professionally, probably around those Congarna times.
Hmm.
And then after all that post, the post about my past and whatever, like that big Twitter post
Yeah.
about college and whatnot. After that post, I was like, all right, there's too much hate for me to really. I mean, it wasn't that much hate. Don't get me wrong. There was still a lot of people supporting me. Um, but it got to a point where I was like, all right, there's no point in caring about what they think anymore, really.
Hmm. So, what was it like going through that paranoia? Like, as you were going through, how did it affect your life then?
I don't know. It didn't really change it too much. I mean, I've always been a paranoid person my entire life, pretty much. So,
Really?
like, I always, yeah, like even if like my best friends, I would always like say we're in the car or something like that, and then one would try to like whisper to my like just to troll me or something like that. He tried to whisper to him, and I'd get super paranoid because like, oh, he's talking shit about me or something like that.
Hmm.
When realistically they weren't. Like nobody cares about you or whatever. Like enough to constantly talk about you. But I always thought in my mind people were talking about me or something like that. So I was
Hmm.
always just super paranoid that nobody like people didn't dislike me and people like me for the most part. But I always had this concern like, oh, they don't like me or something like that, or they don't like me enough or something like that. Maybe there's
Hmm.
some dirt or something on me, and maybe something embarrassing they're saying. But I always dealt with my entire life, and I mean, I still kind of deal with it nowadays. Anyways, I'm just a paranoid person, I guess.
Hmm. So, how do you work through that? Because I can actually relate to that a little bit. That sometimes it feels like, at least for me, that everyone's like they're kind of like judging me. And the big thing I get, especially with like my job field that I've been, because I worked in mental health, is people are like, "Oh, you're just trying to like read me, or you're mind reading me," and it always felt like people kept me like distant. And I don't know if that's true or not. In fact, I'm pretty sure it probably isn't, and I don't mind read people because that's not an actual thing. Hate to break it to you, but you get that feeling of like, wow, it feels very lonely, even though I'm with a group of people, or you get very paranoid that wow, maybe these people don't actually like me. How did you handle that?
I don't think I really did, to be honest. It's just kind of something I've always. I mean, I guess the way I handled it wasn't necessarily a good way. It's just
Yeah.
kind of like I guess there's even there's probably multiple circumstances, but there was a time in that DECA thing I was talking to you about, which where I was in a group with we're like, so DECA is an organization in high school for marketing kids, and there's like thousands upon thousands of them. And I applied for my junior year for the position of state officer, which was for the entire state. There's like 6 or 7, I think 8. I don't know how many people we had in our group, representatives from all over the state,
Hmm.
and we meet every now and again for meetings and go on trips and that kind of stuff. But near the end of that time, um, we were at like an event or something like that, and they pulled me to like a group of us. They pulled me together or whatever, and they're like, Dustin, you smell bad or something like that. And I was like, oh shit, really? Nobody told me. And I was like, it just kind of got to my head. Like I kept after I got home after that trip, I was like constantly asking my friends, I was like, "Do I smell bad? Do I smell bad?" So like I don't know, for years and years, I'm like I asked, like I think at my first Overwatch or one of my first Overwatch events, the World Cup, of I think 2017. I think I even like rang the thing and I was asking people if I smelled bad or something like that because I was a little sweaty. So I was like, it's just kind of caught. It's just kind of something that live with, I guess. It's not like to me, it's not that big of a deal because it's something that you deal with anyways. I mean, but obviously there's some like it's hard to sleep some nights, but that's not that bad.
That's not that bad.
No, it's not that bad. It's just usual.
Usual. Oh God.
Yeah, that's kind of where I've moved it to in the back of my mind. It's just like that kind of stuff is just usual and it's easy to deal with now, I guess.
Hmm.
If I look at it that way, it's like a
Hmm.
normality.
That makes sense. I mean, you get used to dealing with the things that you have in life if you don't want to work on them. So, but which is totally different thing. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna press your bit about that. Um, when you first start doing school and you notice your grades are slipping and you're thinking to yourself, "Hey, I need to buy as much time as I can to make it as far as I can." And then how do your parents find out?
uh, I don't know if I
Because
should delve into that too much. I should probably I mean, I could. Generally, they eventually found out because they checked my grades and stuff. So, I mean, eventually they found out just because they saw my grades weren't good, and then it was too late at that point to for recovery. So at that point, they were like, "All right, you got to get out of here." So then they just kicked me out.
How well,
and
and they gave you a time limit, right?
oh yeah, they gave me about a month.
Okay. So they said
So
in a month, we're kicking you out. Uh, what is going through your head when you get this? Because first of all, that conversation couldn't have been easy, and I think it's important that people understand you have definitely rectified a lot of these things with your parents.
yeah, no,
You
I
mentioned
even
earlier, so but I think
yeah,
people
well, real quick, sorry to cut you off, but
no,
yeah, I even recently, I think I just stopped recently, but I've been taking like one or two online classes
yeah.
during my time while I wasn't sponsored. So
Mhm.
I mean, I just was doing those classes on the side to make up for it, and then also for my future. So, but
Yeah. So
um,
so you get told this news, and you're actually not the only person who's had issues with video games and parents. And I know I had Verbo on here, and that was one of the things that his mom didn't, and it didn't really
oh yeah,
like it. So you're definitely not the only person, and I imagine there are a lot of people who are playing video games who probably realistically have issues with their parents with it. So what was it like for you that moment where you know they're kicking me out?
I was pretty relieved to be honest. So I was like, all right, it's finally off my chest. I don't have to hide it anymore. Good to go. Good to move on. Um, and
How
then I
far
just
were
got
you
out
in?
there.
How far were you in the Overwatch like career
That was when
trajectory?
it was when I was on Kagarna.
Okay.
So at that point, I had some I just had friends and stuff, and then I streamed a lot. I just moved to my friend's house at that point because I was like, I think I asked on Twitter for a place to stay or something like that. And luckily my friend Carter gave me a place to stay, so I stayed with him for like 6 months after that. But I was relieved, and I also had a place to stay, so I didn't have too much to stress about at that point. I was like, all right, I just gotta ship my stuff and get out of there.
Hmm.
That's about
So
it.
so let's say you move in, you start doing streaming, you're playing with Kangarna. Um, what's that like being on your own, right? Because this is actually I think it's the funny thing with Overwatch in general is that it's really not like for Overwatch League, it's really not like you're living on your own because so much of things get taken care of for you. At least when you hit Overwatch League, like you don't have to worry about paying rent. You don't. Sometimes you have house cleaners. You have like at least for Overwatch League, it is very much not like living on your own. But you were actually kind of living on your own. What was that like for you? That like transition period of okay, I'm not living with my parents anymore. I'm living by myself.
Well, there's probably two important aspects. Was at the beginning, I wasn't paying rent or any money
Hmm.
because I just asked for a place to stay, and he said you could stay rent free. And I mean, I wasn't making like any money at the time, anyways, in Congarna because that's just how it is as an unsponsored team. You don't make
Yeah.
any money. So there was that not paying rent, but also on top of that, I was not a very demanding person. So the place started getting like pretty gross and like I don't know if we were late on rent every now and again, but like the place was uh not that great. We had like cold water towards the end. Even our toilet stopped working for like multiple months, so I had to like go down to 7-Eleven to take a crap or something like that.
Oh
And
God.
then at that point it was like it definitely was not great. I think that's probably my lowest point in my career nearly was around that point.
Mhm.
Because I had a girlfriend at the time. I probably shouldn't say her name just in case
That's
of
fine. Yeah.
doxing. But she was a pretty demanding girlfriend, so like she made me wake up at like a certain time every day. Um, and yeah, that was about it. At that point, like amidst that time period, wasn't that great. Um, but after I moved out, or towards the end, and then after I moved out, things were looking up again. So
Yeah. So what was that time like for you then? You mentioned it wasn't great, but how was it not great? Was it like a toll on your mental? Was the paranoia worse? Did you have other issues or?
it was more. I mean, I stayed to myself, but also my room was really gross and
Hmm.
nasty in terms of just general living.
Hmm.
So it wasn't great to be in that room 24/7, but I'd rather be in that room than anywhere else.
Yeah.
Like I was in Utah, I didn't know anybody in Utah, so I just stayed to my room pretty much the entire time. But I made friends. I still naturally, I guess I make friends wherever I go. So I talked to the guy I saw every night at 7-Eleven was like my best friend. Like he's this big dude that played D&D with his wife or whatever like that. So I just like saw him like every day or whatever when went to get some
Mhm.
food and chatted with him, and we're supposed to have a D&D game, but I always like I kind of avoided it, so I
Oh,
just
you don't
never
like
played
D and
D&D
D?
with him. No, I do, but I just don't like doing things in general. So like
Oh, okay.
I'm more of a I guess I'm a selfish person, so I like doing things for myself. I was like, D&D that take time, but I'd rather play Overwatch. So
Mhm.
tell him I'll do it, make him happy, and then just play Overwatch.
Oh
But
god.
he was a nice guy. I
Um,
liked him.
so like you mentioned that you can get along with people. Do you build like long lasting like relationships with like other people, like friends even? Or is it because you mentioned that you really like to keep to yourself? I imagine that makes it a little bit hard to like, hey, I have best friends who I can rely on for almost anything. What's that been like?
Um, I guess like yeah. I always have friends that I can fall back on and stuff. Like I said, that friend group
Yeah.
I hung out with in high school. I still talk with them. Like I can probably not like there even was like a point, and sometimes even nowadays, there's even a point where like I don't talk to them for like a year, but I can always hang out with them and always be cool with them. So they'll always be my friends, and it's just like one of those lifelong friend groups that
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate to have. Um, but besides that, what was your other question before
I
that?
was just
Sorry.
I was just liking. Do you build long lasting relationships? Being someone who doesn't like to hang out all the time.
I guess not really too much. Like I already have my friend group, so
Hmm.
besides for like a couple of times when I like my girlfriend Reagan, we've been dating for over a year now. So I mean, I I guess I've never had like long lasting relationships outside of my core friend group. I just kind of meet people, I'm friends with them, but it's not like they're close friends with me, and I won't go out of my way to see those outsiders, I guess. But I mean,
Hmm.
I'll still be friends with them, and I'll be and care about them and stuff. But it's just something I don't prioritize, I guess. I prioritize my real life friends, my tight close friend group, and then there's also obviously a few outliers online. But besides that, I don't really go out of my way to do that too much anymore.
Okay. So getting into like your professional career, Congarna was obviously it's a pretty, I would say, a pretty big team considering that a lot of the people that you played with ended up going to Overwatch League. You had Remix, Bishu, Deepay, obviously.
Yeah,
Um,
Baby Bay,
yep, Baby Bay.
uh, Moth. I think. Well, I played on Toronto. That was a different
Yeah.
storyline, but Moth, and then I think Pank is Overwatch League now. So yeah,
Oh, he's on a two way now, right?
yeah, two way. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's on two way now.
Yeah.
But
So you're on Congarna, and obviously everyone's getting picked up, and you guys all left right around the same time. You went to Toronto Esports, but you have all these people going to Owl, who you played with, and DP being the coach. Do you feel like you got shafted with that, or do you feel like you weren't good enough?
there's probably a mix of both. I mean, at the time, I felt like I got shafted, but realistically, upon reflection, just to make sure that like, just to get some resolution, I get or not resolution. What's it called? My vocabulary is not catching up with me right now.
I don't know. I'm not that
To get
smart, so
some closure,
yeah.
to get some closure, I guess I eventually was like, oh, I just wasn't good enough at the time or something like that.
Hmm.
But like, yeah, I mean, it realistically, upon looking back, I mean, I probably did get shafted to some degree. Like, I was a good player at the time. I wasn't necessarily the best. I probably was maybe average at the time, but I still had the high skill ceiling that I feel like I have. Um, but I didn't. I guess I didn't really have many people that believed in me that much besides teammates. Like, no coach really has believed in me that much besides like a f- maybe a few, but some that are outside of Overwatch League really have
Hmm.
believed in me, but not much in Overwatch League.
Hmm.
So I guess it's just more like a players thing. Like players knew I was good, but not so much coaches, I guess.
So I listened to an interview, and it sounded like you had offers for an Owl team, but you turned them down in order to kind of stay with this core group.
It was a I should clarify. I clarified it a little bit, but it was a tryout for it was for the position that Sleepy eventually tried out for in Shock,
Okay.
which was pretty much. I think that I don't know how they did not to diss at Sleep or anything like
Hmm.
the I pretty much had that offer, and then but when I looked at it, it was for NRG, and NRG at the time had like Harblues, Seagull, and then
Hmm.
they were just awful though the team as a
Hmm.
whole. Like they were not doing good at all. And I was like, Kongarna can be a good team, and I know we do better in Overwatch League than NRG. So I was like I guess I was greedy, but it was also really early on. It was like
Yeah.
June I think. So this was like before any other team started recruiting. Um, so I was like, I guess I have time, and then I also there's time for Kangarn to get Overwatch League together because I'm a very loyal person. So like if I play on Kangarna or if I play on even LNL, like I figure we're all good enough to be in Overwatch League. So because I have complete trust in my teammates, so I'm like, okay, we could get in together probably.
Hmm.
Um, And then it wasn't until the later stages I realized, oh, maybe not everyone on the team's good enough. And then at that point, it was just a little too late, I guess. But it was just for a tryout. But it basically the position that I would have tried out for would have been a pretty good shot at Overwatch League. I just didn't take it. And
Hmm.
I guess I kind of did that for multiple times until Atlanta Academy, where like even the contenders teams, I was like, I would not try out for like a contenders team because my ego was too high or something like that. I was like, oh, I'm better than this team. My team I'm playing with now is really good. Why should I go to this team that has crappy players when they ask me for a tryout? What's even the point of that? Just give me an offer, not I don't know. But
Hmm.
after that point, I was like, all right, that's just not how it works. Teams have all the leverage. If you want in anywhere, you gotta keep moving. So
Hmm.
that's what I
So
eventually learned. But
yeah,
for a large portion of my career, I did do that.
okay. So do you think it was ego driven then? That, like, I'm just the best, and or do you think it was maybe I want to stick? I know that I know what I have here, and
Yeah,
I don't know what I'm going to have there because I think there's a big difference between ego driven and saying this feels safe. I know what we can get into. I think we can achieve this versus this sounds like a suicide like
yeah. I
sign.
figured the way I looked at it, I would not look at the downsides of my teams. I would
Hmm.
always look at the positives. And when I looked at other teams,
You'd only.
I constantly think that they have like one or two players that are holding them back. So it's
Hmm.
like, why would I want to go to that team when I think my team can be better than theirs? So it's like there was that constant. I don't know if that. I guess that is probably ego as a whole, but I was more confident in my team's ability than going to another team, even if that meant salary. I was willing to not have. For one, didn't want to buy out because I didn't want to buy out getting into
Yeah.
Overwatch League, because I figured that gave me a benefit. But realistically, that's probably only put me down because realistically, I at the time I was like, okay, my team's if I'm still on unsigned teams, the way I looked at it in my mind, this sounds pretty reasonable, right?
Yeah.
If you're on the best unsigned team consistently, if you're on Kongarna, one of the best unsigned teams, if you're on who after that? I guess Toronto. Well, Toronto was really good before Contenders came out.
No.
But if you're on Toronto and I wasn't getting paid, I was just playing with them. um, and then after that, I was on bye week, but that was obviously a downturn. But then after that, I was back on to L,
Yeah.
and then I was like, at that point, if I'm on the best unsigned teams, I feel like that should push you past the academy players, especially not having a buyout. That should give you some sort of benefit. But realistically, what I didn't realize is that doesn't get you anything being on the best unsigned team. The only thing that gets you being the only thing that you get being on the best unsigned teams is to academy, which that's what the kind of changed into is that academy was mini Al and the academy teams have all the leverage. And
Hmm.
I guess I didn't. I tried to not believe that until it was probably too late to move on to academy and get paid well and miss out on some money. But I really thought I could do well with unsigned teams and get signed to Overwatch League, but that's just not the route you can take anymore, or was ever, I guess,
Hmm.
unless you're the hot dogs or lucky to get in Overwatch League in the first place. No, not the hot dogs, the corn dogs. Sorry.
So we talk a little bit about unsigned teams, and coming up recently has been like this talk of what's happening with academy teams versus the unsigned teams, and specifically like second win gets brought up a lot, and whether or not like they should have contracts with buyouts in order to run their team, and it's a whole mess. Personally, um, I think so. What do you think about the contender scene in the state that it's in? Are unsigned teams like? Is it even worth having unsigned teams right now, or is it basically like, what's the point of them right now?
Um. Yeah, I mean, realistically, there is no point. Every team. The way I see it is that every team in contenders will be academy at some point.
Mhm,
So it's kind of like I guess it's the way that I envisioned it never was the case. They always wanted it to be full of academy teams and the tier 3 teams that are or the tier 2 teams like second win and the unsigned teams. Realistically, it looks like they have a chance to get an Overwatch League from that point. But even if they do well, even if they have good coaching and whatever, the coaching might get brought up, but the players most likely won't until later on until they're in academy. So it's kind of like false, like it's like a false like eye, I guess. I don't know.
mhm.
It's like you look at it and you're like, oh, these guys have a chance to go Overwatch League because they're in contenders. Not really. They have a chance to maybe move up into academy teams. But even like second one's point, like maybe some of their players will get Overwatch League tryouts. I don't know who they have. Friedwiener, Haku's really good. I don't know their main support now. They have a new main support. Aqua, Mirror's really good. But these players are all really good, and you're like, they're probably better than even some of the players, or maybe even all of the players in an academy team in the bracket.
Hmm.
But they have to move down to move up. It's kind of weird. It's like they're the top of their group, but unless they're picked up as an academy team, which there's a high chance they can be, but it's still a risk, right? It's still a risk
Yeah.
they take, not taking individual signing deals to academy teams. And if they're willing to all go in that boat together, good for them. But I think people have gotten to a point where they realize you have to go to academy. So I think no matter what, it might be a downgrade for them. Like I
Hmm.
spent my entire career not signing to a team just to make sure that I didn't get a downgrade, kind of in terms
Yeah.
of my team. Um, which I guess worked out eventually because now I'm with Atlanta and I'm with some really damn good
Yeah.
players. But obviously, I had to lose two really good players as well. I had to lose, or three, I guess. I had to lose both Decod and Nex, which were both really good players in Europe, um, to get onto this team, which is unfortunate, obviously. But I still have some really good players now, so I'm still in a good spot, I guess. But it's definitely not worth the, what is it, like 2 years of being unsigned to be on a really good contenders team.
Mhm. So your advice for anyone would pretty much be if you have a contenders offer, you should probably take it.
Yeah, probably for the most part. I mean that's kind of shown because wherever Karkar is going, I don't I don't know if it's been announced yet, but like you have to move down to move up. And I'd say
Mm.
even the team he's moving to, um, I would say even the team he's moving to isn't as good as second one. So like it's still, that's what he did, and he's smart by doing it. He's finally done that, and that's good for him because he's still young too. So he still has time to improve as well.
Mhm.
Um, but unfortunately, got to move down to move up.
Do you think that contenders is actually set up to grow talent?
To grow talent.
Yeah, to because that's like the idea behind contenders. You kind of have this lower tier where you get to see people, and hypothetically speaking, with academy teams, they should be kind of like growing talent and improving them. Do you think that it's doing that, or do you think it's just a place where we get to see basically these solo cute kids play in a competitive environment, and if we like them, then we'll grow them on the owl team?
Yeah, I think specific for growing and that kind of stuff. I think it's not necessarily doing that. I think that's more for open division. I think right now growing talent and then bringing them into your contenders team because they're worthy for the contenders team is kind of how it looks to be,
Mm.
and that's kind of how we like recruited Saucy. I think because Saucy, we grew him. Well, he was already a good player and getting better, but he was growing from playing in open division, playing on ranked ladder, being a high level high SR person, but he wasn't necessarily growing from, I mean, he's growing now still in our
Yeah.
team, but he already, I feel like a lot of what his growth came from being in the open division team and stuff. And now he's with us and we're a really good team and now he's playing with a good team. So
Hmm.
it's like I feel like the growth is kind of given to the team, not necessarily to the player right now, I feel like. So I don't know. That's kind of, I guess that's to another point. I guess I want to go into that real quick if you don't
Yeah.
mind.
No, go ahead.
Um I guess like specifically for contenders talent, uh, it's not necessarily been looking at the players. It's more looking at the coaches for Overwatch League.
Hmm.
It's the growth of the coach is more looked at, I guess, than the growth of a player, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like there was, I don't know how many coaches on LNL, but we had what, 3 4 coaches get picked up for Overwatch League and our manager, and only one of our players got picked up for Overwatch League. So realistically, the transfer is more for the growth of coaches and stuff. You could see the best coaches on the
Hmm.
best teams, not necessarily the best players, I guess.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you look at someone like Second Wind and like how many players have left or been there, and then like them still being able to like excel and win and stuff like that. I think is something that showcases the talent of the coaching staff there.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I like that. Looking at uh LNL and going to uh Atlanta, what was the difference? Was there a difference like as far as like practicing and the structure when you guys swapped over to Atlanta?
The difference in structure.
Yeah.
I think it's only gotten really better, just
Hmm.
because of the fact that we have Atlanta, and we have a good coaching staff. But we had a lot of that, especially we had some of the foundation
Yeah.
from LNL, because we had Brad, we had our head coach Steffi, we had Silence that is now working for Atlanta as well,
Hmm.
and then I don't know who else we got, But basically, we had the foundation and those main coaches and legit coming into the Atlanta's academy team. We have like the owl structure helping us right now because it's off season, and that's how
Yeah.
every academy team's working. We have the owl coaches working for us. But we already had kind of some of that from LNL. But I guess it's a lot more specific, and there's a lot more coaches that touch into each base, I guess. So
Hmm.
I can get a lot more individual help, and I can see maybe why I didn't get into Overwatch League as well.
Yeah. So something that's been brought up today, and I know that we're running low on time, and I will get you out of here as soon as
Yeah,
I
sorry.
can. No, you're good. Um, Looking at like some of the stuff that's been talked about like the last couple days, burnout has been something that's been really really big and talked about a lot. And as someone who works in mental health, I like to get the opinion of other people because I definitely have my very strong opinions on burnout and what it is and how we handle it. What are your opinions on burnout? And do you have to worry about burnout in contenders? Is that something that you've seen be a problem? Because you guys definitely had, I would say you probably have less resources in contenders than Owl. Like, I don't think that anyone could argue that. Um,
I
at
think
least, go ahead.
I think burnout has been more of an individual basis thing for me. Like I guess I've never delved into it because what I do naturally when I burn out is I just generally don't play as much Overwatch. I play some other games and that kind of stuff, and I have
Hmm.
time in contenders I think compared to Overwatch League to do that. So
Yeah.
naturally for burnout, I guess I haven't been fully burned out. I just kind of when I get burned out, my level of play goes down. But
Hmm.
when I come back to the game, my level of play will be even higher than it was before the burnout, I guess. So
No.
necessarily for me personally, when I have a burnout, I just take my break. I do my own thing. But I still play Overwatch. I'm just not as in it mentally as I would be, um, as other people. But so it's something I've never really fully got the grasp of because I know
Okay.
that we've even taken breaks on LNL because of player burnout. But I was
Yeah.
like, I don't feel that. I don't understand what you guys
No.
are talking about burnout here. But
That's
like,
that's individual too, by the way. When we were talking about like individual issues, that is something that is complete individual scale, and normally you have to do it based on your whoever has the less stress, like the least like threshold for burnout, because burnout is based on how many stressors you have, and so
yeah,
okay,
yeah, no. So it's definitely an individual thing. Well, I mean, as you mentioned, so um, yeah, and those teams, I haven't I've dealt with it there, but besides that, I guess I've never really played for a team that I've had burnout as a main
okay,
issue.
okay. So with that, I know that you have to get going here. There's one last question I have for you before we get going. If you could see anyone be on this show, who would it be? So it can be. It doesn't have to be a player. It can be a coach. It can be player. It could be background. It could be a caster. Whoever you could see.
I don't know how good. Let's see, who's a good interviewer? Maybe Gator would be a good one. Probably
Hmm.
Gator. I was gonna recommend like Saucy or something like that. Maybe I would even maybe do Sugar Free, but like they're not very talkative people as much to the public, and I think Saucy might have been a good interviewee, but I'd say Gator would for sure be a good guest to have on the show because he's been grinding so his entire career. Maybe he've even I don't know. You'd have to talk to him about past issues
Yeah.
potentially. So um, I'd recommend him for sure. That'd be definitely a different outlook. I think nobody's really interviewed somebody like Gator,
Yeah.
so I think he'd be a good person to have on the show.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here. I
Yeah,
really
thanks, bro.
appreciate it, Dustin. I am so happy to have had you on this show. Is there any shout outs you want to do? Normally I don't do it, but if you want some, I'll let you throw them out.
No, well, thanks for having me. Sorry for cutting you short, by the
Oh,
way. So
it's okay.
thanks. I mean, I felt like this interview could have definitely gone longer if I didn't
Yeah.
have to go. So maybe we'll have to come for a round two if you're
I,
down
I
sometime.
I'm good with the part two. So part one and a
All right.
half. But thank you so much. This has been Deep Dives in
Yeah.
the Minds of Esports, and I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I hope everyone who's watching has a wonderful day.